The following are the words of Lou Civello, president of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers risk their lives to protect our communities and keep our streets safe. These officers are the thin blue line that stands between your family and the criminals that would do them harm. We are your neighbors, protecting your neighborhood. Hold the line. Support law enforcement. Stand with the Suffolk County PBA.
The following radio show is live, except for the announcement you're hearing right now.
Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back as we're moving right along. Every other Tuesday, we have with us the president of the Suffolk County PBA, Lou Civello. Always great to have Lou on. I get a lot of the text messages and emails from you folks liking the discussion that we have. Very enlightening, too. So many times we don't know things, and it's always good to have Lou with us, talk a little bit about the men and women of our police department, who he represents, and what they're all thinking, what they're all doing, how important it is that the public do support our policing. That's a fait accompli here in Suffolk County. But what's happening around the country, folks, and a lot of times I bring these issues up with Lou, it is absolutely disgusting. But let's say hello. Lou Civello, how are you?
Hey, Tom, doing very well. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. I say that all the time. All right, let's go a little west of here. There's a governor out there, Governor Pritzker. He had a press conference 2 days ago. Now, I don't know if you saw the video, but I saw the video. You had ICE agents doing their job. You know, they're in Chicago. Actually, they're in Franklin Park, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. High influx. They're trying to get as many of those folks that are here that are not supposed to be here. Many of them with criminal records. You know the whole idea. The criminal aliens, so to speak. They need to be taken into custody. Sanctuary places like Illinois are protecting them, hiding them, releasing them from jail before ICE can get there. You have judges that are taking them out the back and giving them escape. And you know what's happening right now. So a couple of ICE agents approached a man, and he had no documentation. And so they were asking him to get out of the car, you know, like our police officers do. And of course, they do the questioning, ascertain if there is a probable cause to take the person into custody, if it is a person on their list. Well, I don't know if you saw this. He jumps back in his car and he backs up and he's dragging one of the officers. I mean, he clearly is escaping, Lou Civello. He's trying to get away from law enforcement. It happens on the local level. It happens on the state level. It happens on the national level. Sometimes the bad guys don't want to go to jail, Lou. And this guy didn't. And he backed up the car, dragged the other officer, took off, and he was in critical condition. So they, in order to stop the attack against him, they used deadly physical force, and the man expired. You know, nobody told the guy to try to kill the cop. But Governor Pritzker basically said he was a family man. We're going to look into this. Were they justified? We heard he was just dropping his kids off from school. What the heck? Don't they watch videos? And that'll be my first question. Don't they see the videos, Lou?
You know, they do, Tom, but they only care about their political careers and pleasing the radical part of their own base. And that is what is incredibly unfortunate, because they do a great disservice, not only to our brave police officers, but also to their constituency. So in every one of these cases, whether it is an interaction with federal law enforcement or local law enforcement, where you have a use of justified force, that could have been prevented, could have been avoided. And I don't care which case you take a look at. If it's the case, even the George Floyd case, right? If you take away one element, and that is the element of compliance, whether the police officer is wrong or right? That's why we have courts. So if you don't think the police officer is right, if you think the police officer is way off base or even violating the law, you still have a duty to comply. So even if I don't have probable cause to arrest you, right? Well, then there'll be consequences for the police officer, right? The police officer could end up in civil jeopardy, could end up with actual criminal charges if he's violating your rights. But what you don't have a right to do as a member of the public is to not comply, to run away, to try to kill the police officer. Okay? You never have a right to do that. That is the law of the land. Right? Even if you think the police officer is wrong, you have a duty to comply. And in any one of these cases, if the individual being stopped complies, well, you don't have these outcomes. these tragic outcomes. And it is absolutely the responsibility of the elected official to get that across. And instead, you have this, egregious case where you have this elected official saying, "Oh, we're going to look," almost like, making the problem worse. Instead of saying comply, right? Instead of supporting the police and saying, "Hey, we'll look at the police's actions, but you still have to comply. You can't run the police officer over. You can't try to kill the police officer." You have these reckless statements by these politicians, again, that only care about themselves.
Yeah. And amen to that. I mean, it's common sense that law enforcement wants to question you or possibly take you into custody, but to, again, try to kill them. Take your car. Clearly, you should know. I don't care what country you're from. All right. Common sense will tell you I'm probably not supposed to be doing this right now as I'm backing up my car with an officer on the passenger side and an officer on the driver's side. The one on the driver's side was reaching into the car and he was the one that was dragged. That when you look at that, clearly wrong. But, again, so you have a governor that won't back the ICE agents and talked about how they're heavy-handed, how they're in the city of Chicago, one of the highest crime areas on the planet when it comes to Chicago and some of these other places, that you need to look inwardly. And it's just not happening. That's why we talk about all these different jurisdictions, Lou, when you come on every other week. I just thank God we're not talking about Suffolk County. But it's just, we're lucky here. But they're not so lucky there, Lou.
No, you have these governors and these woke mayors and these blue cities that are just undermining law enforcement. The implicit message that they're sending is you don't have to comply. You don't have to cooperate. They're painting our law enforcement officers, as you saw, with the tragic events surrounding Charlie Kirk. They have this inflammatory language where they refer to our law enforcement officers. And this even happened right here in Suffolk County at our legislature, where they refer to law enforcement officers, ICE agents, as Nazis. And that sort of inflammatory language tends to incite violence, because if it's really someone who committed a genocide, a Nazi that you're dealing with, well, then all bets are off. And that's the message that you get sent when you have this reckless inflammatory language that comes from elected officials. It comes from the media. The message is you don't have to cooperate with law enforcement. And they are really stoking and creating these situations where we have tragic outcomes.
Yeah. And you do have there are some political leaders in this in our country that really they have the focus by the major media. They're always looking for them to say something, whether it's CNN or MSNBC and so on. What is Jasmine Crockett going to say today? So what she did, I think it was like 2 days ago, which is another thing that gets me angry. Lou, I probably shouldn't be watching the news because I get very upset at this stuff. She said, "I'm somebody," this is Jasmine Crockett, and I'm quoting her, "I'm somebody that knows history." And she said, "You know where police departments came from? It came initially from the people who chased slaves all over the country. And they were the initial police. And that's why that we have some of the problems with policing in America today, because the forerunner to policing was the ones who rounded up the slaves when they escaped." She gets away with that.
I mean, not only is that historically inaccurate, it is a incredibly ignorant and hateful statement to paint our police officers and equate them with someone who chased around slaves. It just goes to show that they're not there to speak the truth, to put things out that are truthful and accurate. Instead, they are there for clicks and likes and views, and to say things that are as sensational as possible, regardless of the consequences. And it's terrible. It's a terrible state of affairs in our country right now, Tom. We just saw a young man, a leader, brutally assassinated. And I hate to say it, but you have people celebrating. I mean, the cartoon in Newsday was absolutely abhorrent. I'm so glad that Chairman Jesse Garcia called that out and that Newsday, apologized. And one point of distinction I will say with that cartoon, Chairman Garcia accepted the apology from Newsday, which I commend him for that, because there's just too much of, we have to just go after people no matter what. So even when somebody admits that they're wrong and says, how does anyone ever learn from what they did or re-examine their own actions if we never let anybody take accountability and apologize and move forward, right? So, again, my hat's off to Chairman Garcia for jumping on top of that. And I think that's a lesson for everyone. Enough. We're trying to say the most sensational thing possible, equating police officers with slave drivers, equating, conservative voices with Nazis. It's enough. We're doing a great disservice to our youth. We're doing a great disservice to our country. We need to have respectful and thoughtful dialogue with one another, right? That's the only way that we unify. That's the only way that the country moves forward, or else we're going to allow these fringe movements to divide us to the point where we devolve into violence.
You see, the individuals that I'm talking about, like Jasmine Crockett, they have the bully pulpit, and that's what's scary. And that's why it's important that we have leadership that represents what really is the common sense. And if it has something to do with policing, then it should be people involved with policing. Certainly our union heads. I know you're quoted quite a bit whenever there's an issue going on. And I think that's wonderful, at least that we're going to get the common sense approach and the truth. Because when you get a Jasmine Crockett, they'll go to her. They'll listen to that nonsense. So it's not that you're just going to a nobody. You're going to a member of Congress and somebody who's made a name for themselves. That therein lies, to me, a lot of the problem, that there's got to be legitimate spokespeople. A guy, as you mentioned, Charlie Kirk. I didn't know him that well in terms of the things that he did until the last week. And I started watching hours and hours and hours of his videos and challenge me type of rallies that he had at the schools. And he's very entertaining, very charismatic. And it was good because he put together a way in which to approach certain ideas. Policing always came up. And his approach on policing, this whole idea about defunding and so on, back in 2020, because you can go back a good number of years with when there were controversies and so on. And 2020 was a very important year for policing in America. It was almost like a key point on what direction we were going to take. And some police departments were defunded, and crime rates went up and so on. One of the things that happened this week, and to gain your comment on it, Kathy Hochul, our governor, somebody that at least paid a little attention to the Suffolk County PBA. I know you had a meeting with her. She was watching some of the things that you were saying for the organization, for the PBA, and you did meet with her. But she meets with Mandani, and she decides that she's going to endorse him, and he will be the next mayor. And she said, I gained a concession. And the concession she gained, that he will pick somebody good to head the Suffolk County, the New York City Police Department. And that was her concession. And he said, I will. I don't know, Lou. Is it me? Is that enough? Is that going to be enough? A new police commissioner that he picks?
No, clearly not, Tom. I think it was a terrible decision on her part to endorse Mandami. He, very clearly wants to defund the police. His public statements are out there calling police racist, just a reckless statement that puts officers in danger. This individual isn't going to pick someone good. And even if he did, that commissioner would not have the autonomy to move the department forward and to do what they want to do. You're going to have an activist mayor, and he is going to run that department like an activist mayor. He's going to run into the ground. I think that is really clear. I hate to say I'm judging him before he even wins the race or gets into office, but we have to judge him on what he said.
What he said.
And if history is any teacher, the New York City Police Department is in for a world of hurt with this guy at the helm. I'm quite disappointed in the governor in her endorsement, and she was actually having a public safety appreciation day this week, which I was supposed to attend. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be there. I hope that she has some influence over him, Tom, because it seems as though he's going to win. I mean, Cuomo is a disaster in his own right. It's just a terrible candidate. Mayor Adams is polling near the bottom, and I don't know that the Republicans can get their stuff together behind Curtis to have him ultimately be successful. So, I mean, the likely outcome here is that we're going to have a socialist mayor in New York City who hates the police.
That's it.
Yeah. and I hope that the governor has some influence over him, but I will be shocked if she does.
Yeah. Again, so the mere fact that she said she did this because of this concession, that was not a concession in my mind at all. He'll pick whatever or whoever, and it'll be somebody that will have progressive viewpoints. How many times have we watched some police departments that have been under stress that their chiefs or their commissioners or their politically appointed heads just didn't have the backs of our police at all? In many instances, we saw that happen in the George Floyd situation, where one of the chiefs was actually cited for perjury when it came down to the type of training that police officers get in terms of utilizing restraint that they were using on George Floyd. And that was taught in the Minneapolis Police Academy. And the chief lied about it, said we never taught that, when in essence that was a main part of their curriculum. And it was a curriculum that works in terms of use of force tactics, that to restrain an individual, which happened there. See, I come from one of the schools of thought that Derek Chauvin should not be in jail, did not murder. I get a lot of criticism for that all the time, but did not murder George Floyd. And yet we have lived through that nightmare over the last 5 years. He has lived through that nightmare, being in jail. He's a political prisoner in my mind. You know, maybe when I'm speaking medical, but the evidence is not there. The autopsy showed that he died from fentanyl, and fentanyl was in his system. Thousands of Americans a month die from fentanyl overdose, and that's what happened to him. But yet there was a need to get the cops at that time in Minneapolis, and they did. And we've had to live through that. And I think one of the probably biggest tragedies we've ever had in policing in America was that wrongful prosecution that took place. Lou?
Yeah, and certainly from the time when I first saw that video till the trial, my views on that had changed, because there were so many nuances, some of which you just referred to, with the fact that the training he received, he was using the techniques that he was taught in the academy, the fact that these drugs were in George Floyd's system. There were so many factors that were not made public, and then clearly, I mean, this is unequivocal. He didn't get a fair trial. When you have, basically a lynch mob waiting outside the courtroom to riot, those jurors and that jurist were under such pressure that if they came back with anything less than a guilty verdict, that there was going to be, systemic violence at that point. And he certainly did not get a fair trial. It wasn't a trial on the merits. So I would agree with you, Tom, after watching how the trial played out, that, this is wrongful, and there probably should be a new trial in that case.
And just add in the civil suit that was taken against the police chief, and it turned out that she was actually suing a radio station, television station, who I had the commentator on my program, and very compelling evidence there as to what took place on those days that trial was going on, and she was found to be lying. And the instructor, one of the instructors on that use of force technique, and that alone should justify a new trial. And I hope he gets one. I think they're going to be looking at it in November, and I would hope he gets a new trial. I just think it's terrible what happened, and so on. So when we look at all of this and we try to put it together, whether we attach it to what Donald Trump is trying to do in Washington, D.C., and now Memphis, he's going to be going into Memphis. Do you think the activities of the president is a good thing?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, ultimately, you never want the federal government coming in and taking over a local jurisdiction, because, if Donald Trump can do it, then, Kamala or Joe Biden or whoever comes next can come and do it the other way and say, hey, we're going to impose a bail reform here. You're locking too many people up and you're infringing upon rights. So I think the threat of it is good. I think his intentions are certainly well-purposed. And, I think he is very adept, the president, about, getting what he wants without having to bring the hammer down sometimes, just by the threat of it. So I think that is all good. That being said, it really is incumbent upon these local elected officials to do your damn job. Yes. Right? Whatever your politics are, put your constituents first, put their families first, have a police department that can actually function, that can actually protect the public. And, if you're not doing your job, then the voters need to take some action and vote you the heck out, because at the end of the day, it's your family's lives that are on the line when you defund the police department or you cripple a police department. And, I think as the commander in chief, he's saying to himself, hey, it's my duty to protect the public of this nation. And if you're not going to do it, then I'm going to do it. So again, I totally agree with him on that. I just think it's dangerous because we can go back and forth here as you move to the next administration.
Excellent. Once again, always great to have Lou Civello, President, Suffolk County PBA. Lou, we'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
You got it, Tom. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we get back, District Attorney Ray Tierney coming up next.